Spider-Man Brand New Day is the fourth installment in Tom Holland's series of Spider-Man movies and the newest entry in the MCU. This movie takes place a few years after the events of No Way Home. At the end of that, Peter Parker had Doctor Strange cast a spell that would make everyone in the world forget Peter Parker in order to save the world. That's what had to be done, so it was casted. Ned, MJ, the Avengers, none of them know who Peter Parker is. They have all forgotten him. Peter Parker, he's completely on his own. He has been for a long time now, and he basically has just taken on the mantle as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He is absolutely beloved in New York. He fights crime. He takes out baddies. And at one point, though, he starts experiencing some changes with his body, some changes with his powers, and when a new threat emerges that might be dangerous to not just himself, but the people he remembers and was close to, it becomes a very personal obstacle and challenge that Peter has to face in this movie. I absolutely love Spider-Man, and what might be a hot take for some of you certainly is among my group of friends and probably among my generation. I think Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man. For me, he is the one guy who perfectly encompasses what both Peter Parker and Spider-Man is. He nails it as both. And that's what I'll get right into with this movie. Tom Holland, in this movie, he's clearly got this down to a science. He is in the zone. He knows what needs to be done with this character. He clearly loves playing Spider-Man. And he's so freaking great in this movie. Like, this is probably the best performance he has given as Spider-Man. Rank however you want to rank the actors who have played Spider-Man, but nobody who has seen Spider-Man Brand New Day can deny that Tom Holland is fantastic in this movie. In the Spider-Man Home trilogy, if we want to call it that, during that stretch, you could argue that was the Marvel Cinematic Universe's way of giving us a Spider-Man origin story. You see Peter Parker truly learning what it means to be Spider-Man, what it means to be a hero, to stand on his own, what with, great power comes great responsibility means, what it means for him to be Spider-Man. And that's why at the very end of No Way Home, you truly feel like the metamorphosis, the change, the evolution for Peter Parker's transcendence into becoming a superhero, you really feel like it's complete. You feel like at the end of No Way Home, he really has earned the mantle of Spider-Man if he hadn't already. And that's one thing that really works in this movie. Tom Holland doesn't feel like he's playing a high school student anymore. He feels like he is playing this young man who's alone, who's a little bit depressed, conflicted, has lost everyone he loves in some way, shape, or form. You see a guy who's just battling the demons and the darkness that's inside him. Not in a way like Spider-Man 3 where, there's evil at him that's coming, trying to take a hold of him, but more so in a sense that, he's really just weighed down by his emotions. He's weighed down by life. He's weighed down on the fact that he doesn't have anybody anymore. And you see a really bleak Peter Parker, and I think that's great for this movie because I think it's a great representation of what men deal with. It's like, we're not really taught to be very expressive of our negative feelings, or when we're going through the ringer, you're kind of just, you gotta keep it close to the chest. And you see that with Peter here, and I absolutely loved it for his character. But I really do love seeing him as Spider-Man, because when he's in the zone as Spider-Man, he's funny, he clowns with his enemies, he's clearly having fun doing what he's doing. He still brings a lot of energy to being Spider-Man. And that's great to see in Peter Parker, because in a lot of ways, Spider-Man has now become Peter Parker's escape. And what this movie I think does really well is it takes a lot of the best elements from the old Spider-Man movies, namely some stuff from the Raimi trilogy, and even a few things here and there from Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man movies. It takes a lot of elements that work for there, and it puts them into this movie that really works for them. Namely, you look at Spider-Man 2. Peter feels alone. He feels, really overwhelmed by being a superhero and just trying to live an everyday life. He's going through some changes that have affected his powers in such a way. He's realizing the life of being a superhero is a lonely life, and he kind of has to come to grips with that, and that's really hard. It is what brings some very emotional moments in this Spider-Man movie that completely worked for it, and if you're a fan of the Raimi trilogy, you're going to see stuff like that in here, and you're going to love it. And speaking of previous Spider-Man movies, what this movie does that works so well for it is a much more grounded Spider-Man movie. Like, this feels like your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. What I mean by that is you feel like in this movie, New York plays such a big part in this movie. It is the main setting, and that's awesome. In previous Spider-Man movies, it was very multiversal, it was very big in scale. You know, Peter's, you know, traveling all over the country, or all over the world, or all over the universe, and, you know, he's teaming up with the Avengers here and there, and, you know, there's always a big name Avenger making an appearance in a Spider-Man movie that's, you know, working alongside him in some way, shape, or form. And not that there was anything wrong with that. I completely understood what they were going for because, you know, they wanted to incorporate Spider-Man into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so they had to set him up with some really big threats and get him ready for some really big things. And at the same time, you know, they were trying to help him grow fast, so he had to face really big threats and, you know, big things that were universal. They had to mix it up with Spider-Man. It couldn't have just been the same old Spider-Man that we had been getting with the last couple Spider-Man. In this case, though, we go back to the roots, and it is Spider-Man in New York doing normal Spider-Man things. You know, he's taking out bad guys, you know, he's working with the police. He's even talking a little bit with a Boston accent when he's Spider-Man. Not Boston, what the fuck? I meant to say New York. I'm from Boston, I just think Boston. He's in Queens, it's a New York accent, but, you know, he wields it here, and that's awesome. So as a result, he talks with a lot more New York slang and attitude. It made for some funny moments with Peter Parker. I thought it was great. And apparently we gotta give a lot of credit to Tom Holland because, from my understanding, I could be wrong on this, I think the studio wanted to make another multiversal Spider-Man movie. He had the idea, he was like, no, we should stay more grounded. Let's make this a street-level Spider-Man movie. And it completely worked in that sense. What I also really love in this movie is Spider-Man's suit. The suit in this one, it feels more real. Like, it feels a lot more like a guy in a suit. Not that that wasn't the case in the other MCU movies. I mean, granted, the Iron Spider suit, that was probably very much CGI, but I will say, I do think that suit's still really fucking cool. But in this movie, the suit feels a lot more practical. It feels like Tom Holland is in a Spider-Man suit. There's even a little feature here in this movie where you can actually, if you look closely, you can see his eyes behind the mask. I thought that was really cool to see. That's not something I think we've experienced in other Spider-Man movies, but here we do. It feels like there is a man behind Spider-Man. And the suit in this one's great. You know, it's not a high-tech suit that Tony Stark built for him or something like that. This is purely a Peter Parker suit that he made from scratch, and it feels real, and it looks great. It's not quite on the same level as maybe comic accurate, great, that maybe Andrew Garfield's suit was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but it's pretty awesome. And the action in this movie is definitely among the best we've ever seen in any Spider-Man movie, because again, what you've heard from Dustin Daniel Cretton is this movie went for a more practical approach. There's not a whole lot of CGI in this movie. Now granted, there is some CGI, for sure, but the moments where Peter is swinging through the streets, or, you know, he's climbing walls, or, you know, stuff's going on with, you know, cars or whatever it might be. We learned from some behind the scenes stuff via social media, or simply from word of mouth. A lot of stuff was very practical in this, and as a result, things feel a little bit more real and a little more impressive when things are pulled off. I mean, so many of us, at one point or another when we were kids, looked up to and admired Spider-Man, and seeing him do stuff on a more realistic nature, granted, realistic's maybe not the right word, but when you see it, and it just clearly looks a lot more real, it brings you more into the world. It sucks you in more. You feel like you are there with Spider-Man, and that's awesome. Now, this is a movie that does tackle a lot of issues with Spider-Man. As I mentioned earlier, it touches on him going through some changes with his body. His powers start developing in a different way, and he's trying to work through that. So, you know, that leads to him, you know, talking with other people or figuring out what's going on. He, at one point, is teaming up with the police, and then he teams up with, you know, another group or another organization that you believe he should be working with. And then, you know, it's him trying to deal with the conflict of, you know, he misses Ned and MJ, and he's seeing what's going on in their lives, and he wants to be a part of them, but he knows he can't. He knows they don't remember him. There's a lot they tackle in this movie, and as a result, it is a long movie. It's 2.5 hours long, and sometimes you do feel the length. And for me, one of the areas where I felt the runtime most was when we delved into the personal life of Peter a little bit more. Like, you know, when we focus on Ned and MJ to a pretty substantial degree. Not that I have anything against the performances or the actors or the characters, but for me, I think if the movie just focused maybe a little less on Ned and a little more on MJ, I think the movie would have serviced a little bit better. It would have cut down on the runtime and it would have made sense. Because Ned in this movie, while he is Peter's best friend, Ned's whole thing in this movie is like he's developing this app to try to find Spider-Man because he wants to thank Spider-Man for saving him on all those occasions, which is fine and all, but you kind of didn't really feel like that was a plot line that needed to be in this movie. If that was taken out, I don't think the movie would have been that much different. But having Zendaya in this movie as MJ and seeing the interactions that she has with Spider-Man and with Peter Parker in this movie, those ones should have stayed, because you can see in the moments where, you know, Peter and MJ interact, him missing her, that's really what's left him with such a broken heart here. I mean, he loves her, he wants to be with her, he knows she doesn't remember him, he also kind of knows that she shouldn't be with him because if she's not with him, she'll be safe. Because undeniably, the chemistry between Tom Holland and Zendaya is once again awesome in this movie, and when it focused on situations between the two of them, that's absolutely when the movie's emotions hit an all-time high, and it does crush your heart a little bit. And one thing that I really appreciate with this movie doesn't just straight up abandon what No Way Home set up at the end of it, when everybody forgot Peter Parker. This movie very much plays on to that. It respects how that movie left off, and it carries that on here. You know that Peter has a long journey ahead of him that can't be resolved in one movie, which is great. That makes me excited for the further trilogy that we're supposed to be getting with Tom Holland, and when he has these very strong, deep connections with certain characters, and you feel like there's a chance things could be reawakened, it gives you hope. As far as other characters that are in this movie, Mark Ruffalo returns as Bruce Banner, and I will say, he's not in the movie for much, but for what he does provide into the movie, it was good for the movie. And I will say, we do finally get a great, you know, savage, rage-out Hulk scene in this movie, which we have been waiting for a long time. I mean, I was fine with the Professor Hulk route that they took in Avengers Endgame because I thought it worked for that movie, but for me, they probably should have left that just for that movie. Once they kept milking that for a while, I think we all kind of reached a point like, okay, that was fine for one movie, but let's get back to Savage Hulk. In this movie, we do. It's great to see him again. Great scene of Hulk and Spider-Man. I'll leave that with you. But the other character that I gotta talk about that, for me, was one of the biggest standouts in this movie, and one of my favorite parts of this movie, John Bernthal in this movie as Frank Castle, the Punisher. He was the most welcomed addition to the Spider-Man movie. I was very surprised to hear we were getting Punisher in this movie because, I mean, Punisher is a pretty R-rated hero. He's ultra-violent, he swears a lot, and he's got an extremely fucked up, dark backstory. I mean, pretty tragic stuff with him. But what I loved about the Punisher's inclusion in this movie is they didn't nerf him down even though it's PG-13. He still very much felt like the Punisher, you know, short-tempered, angry at everything, you know, wants to do things his way, doesn't give a fuck about anyone else's code of conduct. Like, if he thinks it's better off if someone has a bullet in their head, he'll put a fucking bullet in their head, and he does not care what anyone thinks, including Spider-Man. But that was really awesome to see, the chemistry between Spider-Man and Frank Castle in this movie. The two of them, they played off one another so well. Like, they both want to fight for justice in New York, but they both have very different ways of going about it. And because they are very different characters, they play off one another extremely well. It easily led to some of the funniest moments in this movie. The chemistry between the two actors was great. You got a hint of that in The Odyssey. You see a lot more of it here. So, glad to see the two of them teamed up. And I really hope in future Spider-Man movies we see more of the Punisher, because I really loved their friendship, if we want to say it's a friendship. Alright, now, as you'll recognize from the title of this video, and from my intro, if you remember that from forever minutes ago, I do need to get into some spoiler territory here, because I need to talk about one thing, one character, that for some has been a little bit of a make or break point of Spider-Man Brand New Day. It certainly has been for me. So, I'm going to say this right now, I'm going to warn you once again. If you have not seen Spider-Man Brand New Day, which frankly would be shocking because that movie's already made just about $1 billion, or maybe it will be $1 billion by the time I have this uploaded. But if you haven't seen it, and you want to, you should probably shut my review off right now. Alright, let's get into it. Sadie Sink in this movie. Let me first say this. I thought Sadie Sink was brilliant in this movie. Her performance was great. I completely bought into her, and I think she absolutely crushed it. Crushed it for what this movie needed her to do. Now let's get into what this movie needed her to do. In this movie, Sadie Sink plays in what is probably the worst kept secret in Marvel. She plays Jean Grey. Now, for those of you who don't know who Jean Grey is, she is a telepath. She can inhabit other people's minds. She can control them to do certain things. And she will eventually become one of the X-Men. She, I assume, is part of Marvel's introduction to the X-Men, or then bringing the X-Men into the franchise and rebooting what that team of heroes will be. That's all exciting, that's all great, but Jean Grey is very clearly painted as the villain of this story. And gonna be honest with you guys, she's a pretty dark villain. Now, Jean Grey's whole storyline, or backstory rather, is when she was younger, she and her sister, who was also a telepath, her sister was abducted by Damage Control, which is a group of people who were trying to weaponize the telepathic nature of her sister. They've been working with Spider-Man, but Spider-Man doesn't know their whole evil nature. Yeah, all that good stuff. But yeah, Jean Grey's sister was taken, and now she is going through hell or high water to find her sister again, and she's taken some pretty ruthless acts to do so. And she's willing to get through Spider-Man and even kill Spider-Man if it needs to happen. I mean, there's a few moments here where not only is she willing to kill Spider-Man, she does some pretty morbid shit. Like one thing in particular, she is jumping through different people's consciousness to talk to Peter, to converse with Peter, so Peter doesn't know exactly where she is or how she's controlling individuals. But there's a moment she inhabits what I assume is just some random guy on the street, backs him up into the street, and once she's released control of him, wham, he gets hit by a taxi and is probably killed. I mean, at minimum, the dude's paralyzed. Like that, he wasn't gonna get up after that. She also takes over different people to infiltrate certain things. She's not afraid of putting various people at risk or at harm. There's even a moment in this movie where Peter Parker has found MJ. He takes her away from her apartment because he knows Jean Grey's coming after her. He knows something's coming after her anyway. And there's a moment where it's just the two of them together, and MJ is saying how she's starting to remember that, you know, she knows who Spider-Man is. They kiss. She says Peter. They hug. Peter starts crying and saying, I love you, I miss you so much. And then MJ starts talking more, and you realize Jean Grey is in control of her as she said and did all that and gave Peter all this false hope that the love of his life remembered him again. I'm just watching that moment. I'm just like, wow, you dirty fucking bitch. Like, yeah, forget Thanos snapping his fingers and wiping out half the universe. That is the most evil, cold-blooded shit I've seen anyone do in the MCU. Okay, I'm mostly kidding when I say that. Mostly. But it's not even just that. Immediately when that's over, she launches MJ off of the roof, brings MJ back to reality. She realizes she's gonna fall to her death, and, you know, Spider-Man's gonna chase after her, save her, and he's able to do so, but you have a brief moment where it's like the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2, where, you know, shaking her to make sure she's awake, like Peter did with Gwen in that movie. Not gonna lie, for a moment, I thought MJ was dead, but good news for you all, she's not. I mean, Tom Holland and Zendaya are married in real life. I think at this point, Zendaya's gonna ride it out for as long as he does. But regardless, it's like, in that moment, you completely played with his heart, his head, his emotions. You threw the love of his life off a rooftop. Now, granted, maybe she just believed Peter Parker would catch her, but even still, it's a big gamble. Like, she just does some really over-the-line shit. Now, granted, at the end of this movie, the movie tried to make it out like it's a big, you know, full circle moment for her. Like, she turns a corner, she becomes good, or whatever you want to say. I mean, I think the movie tries to make it out at the end like, oh no, she wasn't a villain, she was a tragic character, which she obviously is, but they want you to feel like by the end, no, she's a hero now. And now, granted, I won't get into the whole final conflict, but Spider-Man lets her into his mind finally, and she hears something that Aunt May said to him, and it resonates with her, and, you know, Peter's kind of reassuring her that you have me, you will not go through life alone, and, you know, Peter saves her from getting shot, and in turn, she does save Peter's life. And again, yeah, she deserves credit for that, but I feel like the movie wants me to now see her as a hero, as a future X-Man, and I'm not able to do that yet. I don't like her. And that's unfortunate. It just seemed like a really interesting way to introduce someone who I know is going to have such an iconic, heroic role in future Marvel movies. It just seems strange to make her such a dark villain for the story, especially with her character. I feel like there's a lot of gray areas with her. It's like, well, I mean, for all this damage you did to innocent people and this damage you did to Spider-Man, couldn't you have just gone after the guy that abducted your sister somehow, some way? Like, was it really that hard? Like, I don't know. There's some plot holes with her that make my wheels spin, and I just don't like her execution as a character. I don't like that I feel like the movie wants me to now be on her side at the end, and I'm just not yet. Now, who knows? Maybe she'll end up like Loki, who started off as one of Marvel's biggest villains, and by the end of his story, he committed one of the most heroic acts in the franchise. Perhaps. Or maybe us seeing her like this as such a damaged character with a lot of hate and anger in their heart, it's meant for us to see the massive effect that Professor X, whenever he's introduced to this franchise, the effect he has on these young mutants, the right path that he can lead them down along the way. So who knows, maybe once the mutant saga kicks off and we really get introduced to the X-Men, maybe after a few movies with Jean Grey, maybe she will, in turn, she will go on her own little character odyssey, and she will journey from being this really evil, well, not evil, but someone who commits very evil acts in this movie, to someone who becomes a great hero by the end. If they can do that, and it's very well earned, then I can definitely see myself looking back on her character more fondly because of seeing her progression. But for now, this is just how I feel about her character, and I wish they hadn't made her so dark. I guess is the way I feel about it. So all in all, I really did dig Spider-Man Brand New Day. Tom Holland at this point, he's got this character down to a science. He absolutely crushes it in this movie. This is probably the best performance he has given as Spider-Man and Peter Parker. I absolutely loved his chemistry with the Punisher. I think having the Hulk in this movie for what they had him do worked. Some really strong emotional moments in this movie, namely between Peter Parker and MJ. Ned just didn't really feel like he needed to do that much in this movie. They had him in for more than I think he needed to be in for. Loved the action, loved how important New York felt to the story and how it was the setting of this Spider-Man movie, the way it should be. The movie's definitely a little too long in parts, and I'm just not the biggest fan of the way they handled Jean Grey in this movie. I mean, who knows? That's just how I feel right now. Maybe as time goes on, I will feel differently about that, but I can only speak for myself right here today as I'm giving you this review. But in the end, I think it's a great Spider-Man movie. It's another great entry into Tom Holland's series of Spider-Man movies. I think it's definitely better than Far From Home. Definitely not on the same level as No Way Home. I mean, another hot take for you, that's my favorite Spider-Man movie. I would maybe put it like a tick below Homecoming. Yeah, that's probably where I would place it. But yeah, I'm really glad to hear this movie's absolutely crushing the box office right now because I want to see Tom Holland continue to play this character. I'm giving Spider-Man Brand New Day an 8 out of 10, which makes it a movie that I will be buying on physical home media.
Shut up and take my money.
So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video, and as always, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. I will see you all next time.